and I don't even have the topic sheet in front of me, so I don't remember what the topics were. Topic 3, learning self-sacrifice through the Bartimaeus trilogy. Topic 9, magicians, demons, and commoners fight for power. Topic 9, the never-ending drive for power in Bartimaeus, the amulet of Samarkand. Topic 2, Nathaniel's transformations in the Bartimaeus trilogy. Number 2, Nathaniel's transformation throughout Bartimaeus trilogy. Number 2, Nathaniel's development into a typical master. Topic 6, the demon Bartimaeus. Topic 5, the danger of power. Topic 4, the ruling elite in the Bartimaeus trilogy in the Soviet Union. Topic 9, power for oneself never ends well. Topic 9, good versus evil in the amulet of Samarkand. Topic 3, sacrificial acts in Bartimaeus trilogy. Topic 2, Nathaniel's transformation. Topic 4, how a novel can relate to a society as well known as ours. Topic 9, the hunger for power in Bartimaeus, the amulet of Samarkand. And topic 4, separate worlds yet similar problems. Ooh, that's a good one to start with. Separate worlds but similar problems. J.R.R. Tolkien, in his essay on fairy stories, essentially says that's one of the values of fantasy literature. It presents separate worlds, but it deals with the problems of our world in those separate worlds. Okay? Well, we're going to see some similarities in this series. It's called the Aberration Series. It was originally called the Aberration Trilogy, and then he wrote another book, and then it became the Aberration. What do you call that? There's a word for it, and I can't remember what it was. And then he wrote a 5th book, and now it's the Aberration Quintet. Okay, and there's, I think, another, like a little short collections of old kingdom tales or something like that, which I've not read. The last one that he came out with, and it was either earlier this year or last year, and I can't remember the title. Golden something. If you like this book or if you like this series, you'll definitely want to read it because it gives you information about. Oh, did she come up in this one? Drawing a blank.
Golden Hand.
Yeah, Golden Hand. No, she doesn't. She comes up in book 3. It's about this witch necromancer called Clore of the Golden Mask. Okay. I don't really have any background to talk about. Nix is an Australian writer. He's written several series. He's written another one called its general title is The Keys to the Kingdom. Okay. Notice that in and of itself, it's kind of got, it's biblically elusive. Allusive, Allusive. Why? Because Christ gave Peter the keys to the kingdom. All right? And that is a series of books. There's 7 books, and one is for each day of the week. It starts with Monday, and it goes through Sunday. Okay? And it's set in an alternate kind of universe, and I'm trying to remember how many of them I read before I lost interest. Definitely I got through Thursday. I don't think I read through Friday. And then, like a damn fool, a couple years ago we were having a garage sale, and I put most of them out, and then I got reinterested in Nix and really wished I'd had them so that I could finish them, because I still have Something Sunday, the title of the last one. I can't remember what the first word is. It's Something Sunday. But
Lord Sunday.
Pardon?
I have them pulled up. It's Lord Sunday.
Lord Sunday, okay? It's also called the Pendragon series. So if you know Welsh mythology, Celtic mythology at all, Pendragon immediately suggests Arthur. Well, the hero of that story, of those stories, is a boy, 11, 12 years old when he starts, named Arthur, okay? And I won't say anything else about that. This series, unlike the previous two sets of books we've read, has a female protagonist. Okay? Sabriel. How old is she when it opens? Well, take that back. Not when it opens. She's born when it opens. How is she in the next chapter? Old is she? She's 18. Okay? So she's a little bit older, obviously, than Nathaniel is when we first meet Nathaniel, because he's 5. But she's older than Nathaniel is throughout most of, sorry, I've been up since 3 o'clock. Most of the Bartimaeus series, okay? Except for the last book. Last book, he's 17, so she's about that age. In the Chronicles of Prydain, how old is Taryn? Beginning to end.
12 to 17.
Yeah, 12 to 14, something like that at the beginning, to 17 to 19, 17 to 20. So all 3 of them have essentially late adolescent, young adult main characters, main protagonists. So you're obviously, in both in writing about those, in reading about them, you're dealing with some, at least, of the same kinds of issues. Okay? And we're going to see. I mean, it's one thing about Nix. He's very explicit about some things. We're going to see a male character who is frozen as the figurehead on a ship. And he's described, he's totally naked. And he even describes, with a circumcised penis and everything. And Sabriel, the girl character, is kind of sitting there staring and then kind of realizes, I shouldn't be staring, etc. Okay? So, what, if there was something, let me back up and ask this question. How many of you finished it? Okay, don't worry about it. Try and finish it before the next couple of weeks are over. We're obviously going to give away some ending and stuff there. And we see this fairly early on. You were talking earlier about what the books are about. Yeah, necromancy. What's necromancy?
Raising the dead.
Raising the dead.
And spells.
Okay, necro, Latin for dead. You get necrosis if you go to the hospital and you get some kind of staph infection. You suffer from necrosis, the flesh starts to die. You can get necrotic, things from going down to the beach off the Gulf Coast of Florida, or it's happening to people this summer, and get flesh-eating diseases, etc. So that necro's death. Mancy is magic. In the Harry Potter books, you have arithmancy, which to me is just, that's like the most horrible demonic kind of magic there is, because that's numbers magic. Okay? It's math magic, right? Stay away from it. Okay? So it's magic dealing with death. Usually, necromancy involves what? Somebody over here said it when I was over here writing. What about the dead?
Oh, raising the dead.
Raising the dead. Okay? Bringing the dead back. So Jesus was a necromancer, right? Because he said, Lazarus, come forth. And he did a hand symbol or something. No. So what's the difference between, in the Christian religion, Jesus raising the dead, and this kind of raising the dead?
They're mindless creatures. What is necromancy?
New movie out. I think it's out now. Now, the first one was hilariously rip-roaring funny. The Zombieland with... I haven't laughed so hard in a long time when I watched that on Netflix or something. It's what? It's bringing the dead back in. They're still dead. That is, you bring them back in, they don't get their personalities. They're not soft and warm and fuzzy and loving and all that. They're what you put in the ground just brought back out and reanimated. Okay? But that's not the kind of necromancy of our protagonist, right? Or her father. So we do have those kinds of necromancers. So that's an issue. What's another one of the how do I put it? the big questions you have just from the opening, let's say, 50 to 100 pages within this book. What's a question you have about something that's discussed, but you don't get the background information for? Okay? Charter mages.
Charter symbols. The forehead.
Charter symbols.
The rocks, or the, what are they called?
Charter stones. Okay. What's the common denominator to all those?
Charters.
What the hell's a charter? What's a charter normally? It's not a map. It's like a document that spells things out. You know, like a deed. A long time ago, it was called a charter. It's a charter of property. You can have a legal charter, Magna Carta, written in 1215, the Great Carta, the Great Charter, the Great List of Laws. The Constitution is a charter of what? Rights, responsibilities, liberties, etc., etc. What kind of charter is this? Does it exist in written form on something? No. And what does it refer to? Two kinds of this, right? You have free magic and you have bound magic. Okay? But a lot of that isn't explained early on. At least Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings, we see Bilbo, he does this thing with the ring, he goes off, he leaves the ring for Frodo, and at least Tolkien gives us the second chapter to give us the whole background history of the ring, so that we're not totally lost. Here, you're kind of totally lost for a long time. The idea, I think, on Nick's part is, hopefully, I'm a good enough writer. I've caught enough of your attention to make you want to keep reading by the things he shows us. So, before I jump in, I've read these three short biblical passages for the simple reason that they all have this phrase: gates of death, gates of death, gates of death. Because I don't know about you, but I remember when I first read this, 10, 15 years ago now, I remember thinking, that's an interesting idea. Gates of death. Because it's not gates of death like gates of hell. Because the normal kind of Christian mythology, the gates of hell, they're like double doors. But there's just one set. You go through them and you don't come back out. That's why, you asked about Dante. Dante has, at the entrance to hell, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Why? Because it's like the Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out. Yep. Okay? So the gates of death. Well, Nick does something interesting, and I think he gets the idea for the gates of death from these passages. It's plural. It's more than one gate. You don't just die and go to the great beyond. It's almost like it's, a combination of this and Princess Bride. If you're familiar with Princess Bride. Because what can Mad Max do with a nice big fat pill? He can bring you back if you're only mostly dead. See? You go through the first gate of death, you're not all the way dead. You can come back from there and be pretty normal. You might have a weird tick every now and then, or little pieces of flesh might fall off, but you're more or less good. The deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into death you go, the harder and harder and harder it is to come back. You can come back. You can come back even from here. Nobody's going to recognize you. Nobody's going to want you to come back. Okay? But once you go past number 9, that's it. And in some religious traditions, death is that kind of experience or process. It's not just one strike and you're totally gone. It's you die, that is, your soul leaves your body here, but it kind of hangs around for a while. when it hangs around for a while, what do we have? Ghosts. On Halloween, ghosts. In some of those traditions, that soul hangs around for maybe years. In the Orthodox Church, it's there's a 40-day period from the moment where the flat line to the soul goes to wherever it's finally going to go, etc. So he's bringing up that notion, all right? So, start with the prologue. What does prologue mean, by the way? If you're pro something, what's it mean?
Beginning.
You're beginning. It's before, okay? It's the beginning word. It's the word before the word. It's not what's really important, but let me set the stage for you, okay? So, look at the prologue. And I'm going to skip a bunch. They're 3 miles from the wall into the Old Kingdom, okay? It's sunny on the other side of the old wall, but here it's rainy. There's a midwife. She's bending over the woman. So if there's a midwife and she's bending over a woman, that woman's obviously pregnant, okay? She straightens up and the woman's dead. That is, the pregnant woman. And one of the watchers, page 2, says, the child too? Is the baby dead too? Then there shall be no need for baptism. Well, I don't know about you, but this is a world that's not our world. Why is it using words like baptism? Because that's what kind of language? It's religious language. That is religiously powerful language. Because a baptism always implies a death and resurrection of some kind, right? So, child's already dead, don't need to baptize it. His hand went up to brush the mark from his forehead, suddenly stopped. Pale white hand gripped his, forced it down. A voice said, "Peace, I wish you no harm." White hand releases its grip. The speaker steps into the ring of firelight. The others look at him. The hands that had sketched charter marks or gone to bowstrings, they did not relax. The man strides forward. Okay, looks at all of them. And he tells them, "I'm called Aberration." Now that sounds like, my name's Aberration, your name's Fred, your name's Judy. They look around at him, and he says, "And there will be a baptism tonight." Charter mage looked down on the bundle in the midwife's hands, and he says, "But the child's dead. We're travelers. Our life lived under the sky. This happens." In other words, this is part of life when you don't have a roof over your head and you travel a lot. We know what death looks like. Not as I do. But we don't know what he means, not as I do, until much later. And I say the child is not yet dead. In other words, the child only appears to be dead. The child only looks to be dead. The child really, we'll find out later, has just crossed over the first gate and really hasn't gone very far to the second gate. It's almost like the child's holding onto the door on the other side. The man tries to look at him, but falters. That is, he tries to look into Aberration's eyes, but something about this guy says, I shouldn't look at your face. Okay? So, the Aberration says, "It's easily done." Excuse me, the man tried to meet Aberration's gaze. Neither move. And a woman says, "It's easily done. Sign the child Aaronil. We will make a new camp at Levy's Ford. Join us when you're finished here." So, you do this, we'll pack up and leave. Charter mage inclines his head. So the others start to move, and this guy remains with Aberration. The midwife goes to lay the child down and leave. Aberration says, "Hold on, you're going to be needed." She looks down, the baby, girl. Notice, not moving. If the charter doesn't, the man says, and Aberration, interrupts him, let's see what the charter wills. Okay, so if the charter has a will, what's that say about the charter? It's conscious, it is sentient, it has intelligence.
So is the charter.
Well, hold on. What else? I'm not going to answer that. Not until we get to the end of book 3. Okay? Because that's really finally only when it is answered. What else? Let's see what the charter wills. What does that also imply about the charter?
It's above all.
It's powerful, right? It controls things. It has its own will. It can affect fate and such. So, the man takes a bottle out from his pouch, holds it aloft, cries out a chant that's the beginning of a charter. A string of sounds and or words or symbols, but they're things that are chanted with the mouth. And notice it's chanted, it's sung. It's not just merely recited or said. One that listed all things that lived or grew, or once lived, or would live again, and the bonds that all held them all together. So the charter that the man chants is ultimately all about what? Life. Well, it's not death. Things that once lived, they had life. Things that haven't, it's about life. So he's chanting about live, life, whatever. Okay? And as he spoke, a light comes into the bottle. So he's holding this bottle, he chants, and he flips a switch, and the light goes on the inside of the bottle. How to do that? It's for special effects one time. Figure out how to do that. And he speaks, light comes on, and then he's silent. He touches the bottle to the earth, then to the sign of wood ash on his forehead. Okay, he's put wood ash on his forehead. Who does that? Every Mardi Gras. Anybody know? Catholics. What is Mardi Gras? Ash Wednesday. What comes before Mardi Gras? Fat Tuesday. What's Fat Tuesday if you live in New Orleans? Let's let the good times roll. That's when party hardy. Why? Because Ash Wednesday is the beginning of the period of Lent repentance. And you put the ash on your forehead for what reason? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Everything dies. So, party while you can. For tomorrow, the ancient Greeks said, today, let us eat, drink, and be happy, for tomorrow we die. They would say that before going off into battle. So, he touches the bottle to the earth, one of the 4 primary elements. Then he touches to the sign of the wood ash on his forehead, and then he pours it on the child. A great flash lit the surrounding woods as the glowing liquid splashed over the child's head. And the priest, now we're told what this guy is. By the charter that binds all things, we name thee. By the charter that... So now what does it sound like? Think, put the blast shield down, Luke. Trust in the force. We name thee. And Aberration speaks. Sabriel. What's Aberration doing by saying that? Because we're told here, normally, the parents of the child would speak the name. That's telling us Aberration's a parent. And as he uttered the word, the wood ash disappeared from the priest's forehead and showed up on the child's forehead. It's not like he did that. It just, the charter had accepted the baptism. Now that person has, until his or her death, the person who's baptized, has that charter mark. It's not always easily apparent. But in the presence of another person with the charter, it is apparent, which is why when Sabriel meets Colonel Horace, he kind of reaches up and puts 2 fingers. She reaches up and puts 2 fingers, and this is their kind of way of going, okay, you're cool, I'm cool, we're all cool. Tell everybody to put their swords down. You know. But But the charter mage, that's the priest, she's dead. How? He wants to know what the charter is. How can the charter do this when she's dead? Because he goes, is it really gone? Pulls out a mirror. He got no answer, for the midwife was staring across the fire at Aberration, and Aberration was staring at nothing. His eyes reflected the dancing flames, but did not see them. Why? Because a chill mist began to rise from his body, spreading towards the man and the midwife, who want to get away, but now they're too afraid to run. Because where is Aberration gone? Into death. He could hear the child crying, which was good. If she had gone beyond the first gateway, he could not bring her back. Sorry, she hadn't gone beyond the first gateway. So here's death. She's in this point. She hasn't gone past this. He could not bring her back without more stringent preparation, subsequent dilution of her spirit. That is, she'd come back a little touched, Current was strong. He listens. He hears the crying. He goes. He finds her. The first gate was a veil of mist with a single dark opening with the river poured into the silence beyond. Aberration hurries towards it. He stops. The baby had not yet passed through. So he goes to that gate and he's going to stand there till she kind of makes way. Because once the water, there's always, from here through here, there's always water. And it's always moving that direction. So once you come here, because you no longer have willpower, you start to move. And guess what happens the farther and farther and farther in you get? You go faster and faster and faster. Okay? But there's something else out there. Aberration goes towards it. He finds the baby. Okay? It squirms towards the creature seeking a mother's breast. He picks up the baby. And whatever this thing is, says, Spirit of your spirit, Aberration, you can't spell me while I hold her. That is, whatever this thing is. It now has the baby. And perhaps I shall take her beyond the gate, as her mother has already gone. Aberration frowns. He says, I know you. You have a new shape, Caragor. Okay, Caragor is going to become really important towards the latter half to the end of the novel. But guess what? Caragor is going to come back up later. Even though it looks like he's mostly taken care of. Okay? You are now this side of the first gate. Who was foolish enough to assist you so far? That's implying Caragor had been somewhere back here. But somebody, a necromancer, brought him back to here. He's not alive yet. He's still in death. One of the usual calling, unskilled, didn't realize it would be in the nature of an exchange. That is, he called me, and oops, what did that mean for him? He had to die. See, in order to bring something back, something else doesn't take its place. But something else has got to give the thing that's brought back its life force. Yeah. So now you've come to help me. Me? No. I did what? I chained you here. Almost had him put away. Stop that. He almost had him put away, but not totally. Okay? So Caragor makes as if to throw the baby into the stream, and with a jerk woke her. Immediately she cries. Her little fists reach out. She gathers up the shadow stuff of Caragor like the folds of a robe. He cries out, tries to detach her. Why does he cry out? We're not told, so I'm asking you to just guess. The baby cries out, and notice he doesn't have a physical body. He has like shadowy stuff, and she grabs it. Well, what has just happened to the baby's physical body? Was baptized into life. And it's almost like whatever this is, it burns, it hurts him. He drops her, or he throws her away. She lands, squalling, instantly caught up in the flow of the river. Aberration picks her up. Karagor says, some fool will bring me back, and then you're going to pay. Okay? Abhorsen opens his eyes, page 9. So that the midwife was already halfway around the dying fire, ready to pick her up. Frost crackled on the ground. Icicles hung from his nose. He wiped them off with a sleeve. He asked, how's the baby? She says, good set of lungs. A little cold. Okay. So, Abhorsen says, I'm going to take her to my house. Will you come? Is he asking her to marry him? Will you be my wife and take care of this wonderful little girl? No. He's saying, will you be her wet nurse? Will you help raise her? And she's like, let's see. House as opposed to traveling, living under the stars and the cold. And okay. You are, she wants to know, a necromancer, says Abhorsen. But he says it how? You are a necromancer? It's a question. Kind of. I loved the woman who lies here. She would have lived if she had loved another, but she didn't. Sabriel is our child. Can you not see the kinship? She says, yeah, I'll come. I'll look after the child. But you must find a wet nurse. He says, don't worry, I'll take care of that. So the man, the priest, he and Abhorsen talk. And let's see here. Abhorsen says, I wonder if your leader will object to 2 new members joining her band. That is, not permanently, but for a few days. For my work means I must travel, and there is no part of the kingdom that has not felt the imprint of my feet. And the man says, your work? I mean, he's a necromancer. That kind of means his work is raising the dead. Yes, I am a necromancer, but not of the common kind. Where others of the art raise the dead, I lay them back to rest. Notice what's the implication there. What should be the natural position, let's say, of the dead?
Dead.
Dead. Resting. You know?
Underground.
Go out and do Halloween-y stuff tonight. You'll see houses with tombstones, and they have on them R.I.P. Requiescat in pacem. Rest in peace. Just go away. Leave us alone. Okay? He says, I put them back to rest. And those that won't rest, those that won't stay put, I bind them. That is, I bind them in death. And if he can, he sends them here. Okay? I'm not going to say what here is, because we don't see what is beyond gate 9 until the end of the 3rd book.
It's always the end.
And it's really cool what Nyx does. Okay? Because the way death is described by those who go into death is, you really don't want to die. I mean, you just don't. I will say this. There's a moment of peace here, of pure, utter peace. But I won't say what caused it, because you have to do something in order for that peace to come. Okay? So, chapter 1. Abhorsen's at school. She's at her girls' school, girls' college. She's in her last year. She's 18 years old. Okay? And we're told the rabbit had been run over minutes before. Wow, what a beginning of a chapter. Somebody's little pet. What's Sabriel do? Yeah. She goes, oh! You know, and the rabbit's alive now. Probably a little bit different than it was before, you know. We hear about what Wyverley College is like and such. Okay? That she shouldn't be raising dead animals back to life for her friends and such. And pretty early on, pages 18, 19, 20, something comes into the girls' dormitory that doesn't belong there. And notice, she uses necromancy. She doesn't go in thinking, oh, rapist. She goes in thinking, otherworldly thing. Page 21, middle of the page. She took a deep breath, stepped into the doorway, fingers crooked in a spell-casting stance. Even before she looked, she felt the presence of death. That is, death itself was there. How? Well, in the person of the thing that is there. Okay? So, I'm going to skip a bunch. What is the thing that she meets?
Messenger.
From?
Person.
It's a messenger from her father. Why did he send a dead messenger? Because he's dead. Well,
he's on the gate. Beyond
he's mostly dead. He's not all the way dead. We're going to find out later. He is...
5.
Is it 5?
I thought he was at
I was going to say 8.
Yeah, I thought he was at 8.
I think he's really...
That's why he doesn't come back.
Yeah, I think he's really far along. I'm pretty sure it's 8. Might be 5, but I'm pretty sure it's 8. Okay? So why is he sending a messenger?
Because he can't.
Help me. Is that it? Help me? Come up north, find me, bring me back from death so we can live a happy... No. Is it just the messenger he sends?
Sword and bells.
Sword and bells. What should she know immediately when she takes the bag?
She's gonna do that person.
She doesn't know that's a title yet, though.
She doesn't know that's a title.
She should.
She should. Why? Why should she know that? What did she finish last year?
The Book of the Dead.
The Book of the Dead, her training. She got to the very last end, the very last page, where it said, does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? Now, it's only going to be a bit later, I don't know, 50, no, more than that, 100 pages in, when she meets Mogget, and Mogget's going to tell her, read the book again.
It changes constantly.
Pretty interesting, right? How many of you have read a book twice? What happened the second time you read it?
You know his more.
It's not the same book. That's exactly what he means. It changes. Or you change. You see more. You perceive more that's there. Okay? So, she's thinking, Dad's dead, mostly dead. I got to bring him back. But he sent me the bells. He sent me the sword. Why? So she heads north. Where's she going to? Let me get rid of this. So, actually, I don't need to. You have, somewhere in here, you've got a map. A really small one, which for my eyes is almost illegible. So you have ENGL down south and the Old Kingdom up north. And it kind of looks like, not saying it is by any means, but if you know anything about the geography of the island of Great Britain, it looks similar with pieces not on the map, both down south and up above, but it looks similar to kind of northern England leading up into Scotland. Okay? So, describe ENGL, the area south of the wall.
Not very magical.
Modern.
Not magical at all. Modern, for example, what do they have?
Cars and
They have
electricity.
cars, they have electricity, they have airplanes, they have machine guns, they have tanks, they have grenades, they have all the wonderful modern tools of war. Modern, like early 20th century, okay? What about the closer you get to the wall?
Electricity doesn't work.
Yeah, all that modern technology starts going funny. It's like if you had a compass, the needle would just start turning. Cell phones would stop working if they had them, but electricity stops working. Once you go over the wall, no electricity. No planes. Guns still work. Why?
They're mechanical.
They're mechanical. There's nothing electric about them. Okay?
Don't they have magical in Ancestral? Because she was talking about how the upperclassmen learn magic.
Some of the upperclassmen learn magic, but why?
The longer you get away from the
because they're so close. They're only 30 miles from the border, okay? So she gets up to the wall, and page 37, because we're going to have to skip a lot. And a corporal, some young kid, comes up to her. She tells him, I'm a citizen of the Old Kingdom. He demands papers. And we're told, she kind of gives a smile and she makes a movement with the tips of her fingers. It doesn't mean she gets right up in his face and, does something. They're probably down at her side. She makes a movement. He is unaware of it, but somebody else, just leave it open. Somebody else is. Because what happens immediately? She gets surrounded by a garrison of charter mages. And they do what? They pull out their swords, and their swords are, we're told, pointed at her throat. Now, we're not told that they are at the tip of her throat, but I think the implication is they're not far away. It won't take much. Why? This is dangerous. So, Colonel Horace comes up, touches her charter mark. She touches his. He says everything's fine. Okay? And when she does, page 41, we're told this. When she touches his charter mark, cautiously, Sabriel lifted her hand, then as he didn't dissuade her, reached out with two fingers to touch the mark. As she did so, he reached forward and touched her own. Sabriel felt the familiar swirl of energy, the feeling of falling into some endless galaxy of stars. But the stars here were charter symbols, linked in some great dance that had no beginning or end, but contained and described the world in its movement. The world in its movement. That's like the world, the planet, the solar system, the galaxy that it's part of, the collection or cluster of galaxies that galaxy is part of, and the whole universal cosmic movement of everything. That's all part of the charter. Sabriel knew only a small fraction of the symbols, but she knew what they danced, and she felt the purity of the charter wash over her. The officer says, unsullied, she's no creature or sending. Unsullied, unstained, faultless. Okay? So they all put their swords back and they move off. She tells him, I'm daughter of Aberration. He says, you're the daughter of Aberration. I'm Colonel Horace, commander. I met your father once before, etc., etc. She asked, did you know my father? Page 43. She says, he used to come visit me twice a year. Used to, doesn't anymore. I first met him more than 20 years ago. That is, before you were born. Well, what did he do 20 years ago? We're not told that he does this exactly 20 years ago. I think he does this 20 years ago. He builds those wind flutes that are all along the wall. Okay? And what do the wind flutes do?
Keep the dead dead.
They bind the dead. Well, why do they need to bind the dead?
Because they're on the border of the Old Kingdom.
And magic's really rampant, and they keep popping up. We're going to see in a later book, a bunch of kids get close to the wall, and there's dead just like popping up on the ground left and right. Okay? So, he tells her about that, and she says, something's happened to my father. He's like, sorry? What? What does that mean for us? What about the wind flutes? And she says, well, he's trapped in death. The wind flutes, all the dead here. The flutes play a song only heard in death, continue in a binding laid down by Aberration. But the bound are tied to him, and the flutes will have no power. Well, they'll have no power if he's among the dead. And he's like, great. How long do we have? Chapter 3. She says, page 51, well, if he is really dead, they'll simply fall apart under the light of the next full moon. If he's trapped before the ninth gate, she says, the binding will continue until the full moon after he passes beyond. Well, Colonel Horace says on the next page, the full moon's in 2 weeks. So if he's here for the next 2 weeks, after the full moon, and then he passes beyond, they have what? They have another month. If he goes past gate number 9, within the next 2 weeks, then whenever that full, if it's only 10 days or only 1 day, when that full moon comes, all hell breaks loose right there. Okay? So he's like, okay, I need to start planning for hell to break loose. So she tells him where she's going and why. He pulls out a map. He says, our map's not very good. Talks about the Charter Stone a few miles in. Not quite sure how far. Because what happens once you go across the wall?
Things change.
Yeah. I mean, environmental conditions change. For like right here, it's sunny, but she can see snow literally at the other side of the wall. Okay? Page 56. He says, I have a daughter your age. Back in Corvera, the town he's from, with my wife. I wouldn't let her go into the old kingdom. And notice, she met his gaze, and her eyes were not the uncertain flickering beacons of adolescence. I'm only 18 years old on the outside, she said. But I first walked in death when I was 12. 6 years ago. 1/3 of her life has passed since she entered death. I encountered a fifth gate rester, somebody from around this area, she says, when I was 14, and I banished it beyond the ninth gate. When I was 16, I stalked and banished a Mordicant that came near the school. Okay, it was weekend. It wasn't full power, which is interesting little note because what's going to happen within 20 pages? There's a Mordicant chasing her, only this one, not weakened. And she goes, and a year ago I turned the final page of the Book of the Dead. I don't feel young anymore. I don't feel young anymore. Can we extrapolate what she's talking about to our world? Because every fantasy, in a sense, has a bearing on our world. What kind of childhood has she had? She hasn't had one. I mean, Horace is going to say, I'm sorry for that. I mean, I wish you some of the foolish joys my daughter has. Some of the lightness, the lack of responsibility that goes with youth. Should I go there or not? Our society is almost making it impossible, even for teens today, to have some of that foolishness. What do I mean? You're going to graduate sometime soon. You get to be 58, 3 or 4 years, that's soon. Within 2, 3, 4 years, and maybe now, you get on your phone and you tweet stuff that maybe 5, 10 years from now, you wouldn't tweet. You say things, you post things on Facebook, etc. In 5, 10 years from now, you've got a good job. You've got a really good job. Your life's just going well. You're whatever. And somebody goes back through your social media history and finds out you said something when you were 16 years old that because you were 16 years old and a damn fool, you wouldn't have said when you were 26. And that gets sent out. Today, that destroys people's lives. There's a reporter did this in Des Moines, Iowa. about 2 months ago. A guy who started a nonprofit raised $2 or $3 million for either an individual or a group. I can't remember what it was. Okay? And a reporter for the Des Moines Register looked into this person's social media background and found out he said something racially insensitive when he was like 16. The guy's like 25, 26 now. That made corporate sponsors of his foundation pull out from his foundation that he had started for other people. He wasn't making anything off of this. Okay? What's Horace saying here? Whew, girl, you got a lot of weight on your shoulders. In other words, if you can't have that period of time for, how's he put it, foolish joys, lightness, lack of responsibility, the opportunity and time to be a damn fool, which the teens is the best time to do that, okay? I don't wish it if it will weaken you in the times ahead. That is, but don't do it now. Don't kind of check out from your responsibility. You have chosen a difficult path. Has she? Did she wake up one morning and go, I want to be a necromancer? She was born into it. She says, does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? Quoted, the words redolent with echoes of charter magic twining around her tongue like some lingering spice. Those words were the dedication in the front of her almanac. They were also the very last words, all alone, on the last page of the Book of the Dead. Horace, heard that before. What does it mean? Does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? In The Lord of the Rings, Sam raises, in the second and third books of The Lord of the Rings, Frodo and Sam, when they're with Gollum, they start to talk about this notion of how our path is laid. And they kind of make the impression that it's like following the yellow brick road. That as long as they stay on this path, they'll achieve their quest. But a point arises when they're kind of like, is our path laid, or do we make our path as we go? Does the walker choose the path, the way, or does the path choose the walker? What's that mean? Or does the path kind of say, no, this way, go this way, no, this way. Watch out for that pothole over there. What does it know? I don't know. What does it mean? I don't know. So she quotes it, but she doesn't know what it means, she says. It holds power when you say it. In other words, if I were to say that, Colonel Horace, it'd just sound like words. When you say it, it's almost like there's suddenly a deep resonance. I can't explain it. I do know other sayings that are more to the point, like, traveler, embrace the morning light, but do not take the hand of night. In other words, it's getting late, I need to go. So, he gives her supplies, says, I don't want to let you pass, but I'm going to. And they go up to the wall, and we notice it's a nicely built wall. It's a well-preserved wall. What does she notice as she gets closer? It's almost like the wall is alive. I mean, if you look at these walls, what do you see if you look closely? You see all the little holes, the imperfections in the finish of the concrete block. Now imagine for a moment that you came up and you looked closely, and all those little holes were moving. Yeah, I know we see it. Especially in a class like this when you just want to go to sleep. I mean, you look at that and it's like the whole wall is moving. Well, Colonel Horace says, the old kingdom welcomes you. In other words, that's not happening all the time. It's almost like it recognizes one of its own. Well, where was she born? So, she goes on. About 6 miles from the wall, she finds the first dead soldier. If she hadn't stopped, she probably would have missed him. Why? Because there's just a hand sticking out from a snowdrift. So she sees it. He'd been dead for 12 days. No obvious signs as to what killed him. She wants to find out what happened. Notice she kind of digs the man out. She puts his arms across his chest. Takes the sword out of his hand. She stands. She draws the charter marks of fire, cleansing, peace, and sleep. Fire, cleansing, peace, and sleep. That's what death is supposed to be. Cleansing. It is supposed to lead to sleep, peace, while whispering the sounds of those same marks. So she draws the marks and she says the sounds of them. It was and he uses, again, religious language. It was a litany. A litany is a prayer spoken in a church. Usually, it's a series of petitions. God have mercy on judges. God have mercy on soldiers. God have mercy on the president or the leader. God have mercy on... And you go through and you chant through these. And we're told a glowing ember sparked up between the man's folded arms, multiplied into flames, and he's torched. Sabriel took the soldier's sword from the pile of ashes, thrust it through the melted snow into the dark earth beneath. It stuck fast, upright, the hilt casting a shadow like a cross upon the ashes. Why is that significant? In this world, no idea. It's never explained, even in the 3 books, or the other 2. There's nothing in this world that suggests anything about Christianity other than the symbolism that he uses. And we're going to see that same symbol toward almost the very last page of this book. And it's going to be the symbol of a sword creating an image of a cross on somebody. Okay? He's got to be using it for a reason. I just don't know what that reason is. And I've gotten on the internet and I've tried to find everything I could read about Garth Nix's, personal background, religious beliefs, etc., because that usually helps inform you about what an author is doing. There's nothing. There's nothing about his religious beliefs, Jonathan Stroud's religious beliefs, or Lloyd Alexander's religious beliefs for that matter. Heck, take that back. Alexander does say somewhere about not being a Christian, but he uses a lot of Christian mythology and symbolism because it works, he said. It works, okay? So, what's the problem with doing this, however? It's like, boom, sending a flare. She's just done what? Magic. It's a signal, it's a beacon to other magical things, okay? So, she keeps going on. And she comes to the charter stone that's been broken, and she finds more dead bodies. These ones, however, you can tell either how they died or what happened to them afterwards, because they're hacked into pieces, okay? They don't have heads, so she can't send them fully into death, and she can't really use them, that is, as a necromancer would, call one forward or more to animate it and have it do something for her. All right? Let's see here. She does bring one voice kind of back, page 72. A voice comes. A man's voice, husky with fear, one of the greater dead. It came behind us, almost from the wall. We couldn't turn back. It has servant's hands, a mordicant. This is Sergeant Garrett. Tell Colonel, and then one of the greater dead. Has to be something to do with her father. Okay? She goes on. Page 76. She gets to the Charter Stone. She realizes the Charter Stone, what they're now calling Cloven Crest, didn't break from some natural occurrence. Okay? There's still charter marks there, but now they're dead. What do I mean dead? Charter should do what? Move. It's flowing. It's active. It's alive. These are dead marks. Nothing moving. All right? Only some terrible power of free magic could split a Charter Stone. So she gets closer to it. She gets fearful and such. She sees dark patches of something obscuring the marks. Dark patches, dead bodies, blood. And she knew why and how the stone had been broken. The Charter Mage had been sacrificed by a necromancer. All right? Let's see here. She pulls out the bells, and we get them named for the first time. Pages 80 and 81. So she puts these marks out. Actually, pack up. Go back to 79, bottom of the page. Symbols form in her mind. That is symbol for the charter marks. The 4 cardinal charter marks that were the poles of a diamond that would protect her from both physical harm and free magic. What's she getting ready to do? Four cardinal directions. She's going to create this thing, and she's going to be in the middle of it. So as long as these are effective, nothing can come in and harm her. We're going to see this used multiple times in the series. Okay? So she creates them in her mind and stuff. She pulls them out of the flow of the never-ending charter. She draws her sword. She traces rough outlines in the snow, one mark each cardinal point of the compass, etc., etc. The last mark's the north one, okay, closest to the stone. She does it, okay, and then we're told she sheathes her sword, page 80, and starts pulling out the bells. Rana the sleep bringer, or Rana if you want. Sweet, low sound that brought silence in its wake. Okay. Mosrael, second bell. These are all these names and all these bells are going to get a whole lot of significance given to them in the third book. I mean, there's significance earlier, but your understanding just kind of bursts in the third book. Mosrael, the waker. The bell Sabriel should never use, the bell whose sound was a seesaw, throwing the ringer further into death as it brought the listener into life. So when you go into death, you don't want to ring Mosrael, because the dead things there, they awaken. Kibeth, the walker. It could give freedom of movement to one of the dead, walking through the next gate. Direm, the voice that the dead so often lost. It could also still a tongue that moved too freely. That is, if you happen to have this bell and you have a friend who just never shuts up. Belgayer, the thinking bell, the bell most necromancers scorned. It could restore independent thought, memory, and all the patterns of a living person. Or erase them. Notice it's a pretty big or. Sereneth, or Seraneth, the deepest, lowest bell. Sound of strength. It was the binder, the bell that shackled the dead to the wielder's will. That's the one most necromancers use when they bring something out of the dead. They bind it to their will and make the dead thing do what they want them to do. Lastly, the largest bell. Asterael, whispered Sabriel. The banisher, the final bell. Properly rung, it cast everyone who heard it far into death, including the ringer. So when do you use that one? Abandon all hope. Yeah. That's when the case is lost. And in order to win, not for yourself, but for those you're trying to protect, you send everybody within earshot, including yourself, far into death. Okay? So, she goes into death, and she reads the inscription. I was made for Abhorsen to slay those already dead, was what it usually said. Now it continued. The Clare saw me. Okay, so this she has Sereneth. She's still holding the clapper. Charter marks run along the blade. She looks at them. So she's holding the blade of the sword now. And she reads this on the sword. I was made for Abhorsen to slay those already dead. That's what it usually said. Now it continued. That is, she hasn't seen this before. The Clare saw me, second book. The Wallmaker made me, second and third books. The King, second and third books. Quenched me, Abhorsen, first through third books. Wields me. Okay? So, she steps through. She goes into death. And there's the river, and she draws out a paper boat to its proper shape and such. She puts it on her hand, she blows, and chapter 6. Something that had once been human, or human-like at least, was there. Okay? We're going to skip a bunch. She meets a guide. Page 89. And who's the guide? Mom. She's done this before. When she's got deep questions and she needs someone to talk to. She goes into death and talks to Mom. So, Sabriel wasn't really sure, bottom of 89, if the manifestation was the very unusual dead spirit of her mother, which was unlikely, or some residual protective magic left by her. So Sabriel says, I don't have much time, here's what's going on. Okay? And the sending, this projection, does what? It tells her, here's how you get to your father's house. Because she doesn't know the direction. Go to the northern side of the ridge, follow the spur. When you see the big rock, take a left, go down there about 3 or 4 clicks, take a right. I mean, it just gives pretty straight directions. Okay? She goes. Page 95. Well, what has she awakened, run into, revived? Where are we going to put it? Mordecant and Thralk first. Curse you, I will tell the servants of Caragor, I will be revenged. His grotesque gulping voice, this is top of 95, was chopped off in mid-sentence as Thralk lost free will. Why? Bing. She rings Kibeth, which shuts him up. Excuse me. Okay. So, now we're going to skip a bunch. She goes on, the Mordecant follows her. They get to a cave. A sending ghost protects her. We're going to skip all that. She gets through the cave on the other side. And what does she see? She's now nearly at her father's house. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to leave this one up for a bit. Okay? So, here's the cliff. Cave openings here, essentially. In rushing water. Island on this side, or in the middle, rushing water, land over here. Here, on the island, actually, it is the whole island, is the Abhorsen's house, okay? But how do you get from here to here? Notice this is about, I think it says about 1/4 of a mile across. And it's fast rushing water. It's not like a little creek that's 2 inches deep. Well, there's stones just below the level of the surface of the water. So you have to get your feet wet on the stone. I don't know if you've ever been backpacking or whatever, or tried to cross, a stream like the width of this room, where the water's rushing pretty fast, and you can cross it without going all the way in because there's stones that go across, But you also know you're going to get wet, maybe up to the knees or up to the ankles. Only problem is what's usually on those stones? Moss. It's slippery, okay? But she makes her way across. But we're told, page 116, she gets halfway across with 100 yards of pure, ferocious water. So it's not a quarter mile, it's an eighth of a mile, 200 yards across. Ferocious water behind her, and she stops. She gets right here. And she stops and turns around and looks back. Why? Because she's a stupid 18-year-old. She should go here, go all the way across, then stop and look back. Because at this point, the Mordecai's here. Well, what do we find out? Dead things, rushing water, do not mix. He can't cross. So what's he going to start to do? Michael.
Oh, I think about the whole water thing is that like bodies of water and rivers are like holy ground, basically.
I think it's like that.
I think it's like with vampires also in mythology.
I think it reminds them of the gates of death.
Could be. Could be. Still water isn't as powerful as rushing water. That is, if this were in the middle of a pond, this water wouldn't be as dangerous to the Mordecai. But the fact that it's a mighty rushing river, we're going to see later on, they're going to go out. She and a few others are going to be in a little boat in the ocean. And that just, totally free. They don't have to worry about anything there. In fact, one of the creatures that she is with in that boat, who is bound by free magic, the longer he's on the boat and the farther away he gets from shore, the more and more he's able to speak. That is, say things that go against his binding. Right? So, she makes her way to the doorstep of the house, page 118. Bronze door knocker, lion's head and such. She knocks on the door. There's a white cat laying on the doormat. She lay on the brick, smiled up at the cat, blinking back tears. She's exhausted. She's worn out. And she says, essentially, hello, cat. And she notices cat has a collar, red leather, but it's got a charter spell. Not just any charter spell. One of the strongest, most enduring bindings that Sabriel had ever seen or felt. And the bell was a miniature Sereneth. What was Sereneth? That's the sending one. That's the one you ring that, and everybody who hears it, they go off into death. They go way into death. This cat was no cat, but a free magic creature of ancient power. There's that word again. Free, that phrase again. Free magic. It's not bound. It's totally unconstrained. But this totally unconstrained free magic creature is constrained by its collar. Abhorsen, about time you got here. She's like, my name's not Abhorsen, my name's Sabriel. Okay. She asks who you are. What are you? He says, I've got a variety of names. You can call me Abhorsen. As to what I am, I was once many things, but now I am only several. Well, what's the difference between many and several? Several is fewer. I'm a servant of Abhorsen. Unless you want to take my collar off. Notice the collar is what? It's the thing that makes me servant. It's the thing that binds me. You take that off and then you can see what I am. She is going to take it off in a moment.
Is all free magic evil, or is it kind of like wild beast stuff?
Well,
is it evil?
Define evil.
Is it evil or is it beast-like?
No, it's not beast-like. What's another word for free, especially in this context?
Radical.
Unbound.
Radical, unbound. What's another? You're getting really close. Unbound, free, radical, uncontrollable. uncontrollable.
Hungry.
Well, if you're uncontrollable, yeah, you could be hungry. What happens theoretically in the nuclear reactor that suffers a meltdown? Theoretically,
Explosion.
no, not literally. The meltdown, the proverbial China syndrome. It's the reason it's called the China syndrome. It does what? It melts through the cement case that the rods are in. It just eats through that and keeps doing what? It just keeps going.
Are you talking about like what's it called, the elephant's foot in like Chernobyl, right? It's like I forgot what it's scientifically called.
I'm thinking more like 3 Mile Island in 1978 or so. And the same time 3 Mile Island happened in 78 or 79, there was a movie out with Jack Lemmon and Michael Douglas, I think it was, and Jane Fonda called The China Syndrome. That is, the movie hit the theaters at the exact same time as the 3 Mile Island nuclear incident in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Okay? There was a nuclear leak. Okay? And it was thought this thing is going to cause catastrophic damage. Well, it didn't. Chernobyl did. You know, how did they encase Chernobyl?
They like a giant concrete sarcophagus, basically.
Yeah, like Peck Hall size of concrete. In fact, I think that's even too small. Probably more like the new science building. Solid. They just kept dropping concrete from helicopters. I mean, they come with the dumper things and just keep dumping that sucker. But that area around Chernobyl will not be livable, it's estimated, for like another 40, 50 years at least. Why? Because there's still buku radiation. You walk in there with a rad meter. Can't remember what it's called. And it's going to go, okay, all over the place. Okay? So, and there are free magic creatures. All right? Free magic creatures are uncontrollable. They're like that. Okay? Unless they're bound. And they can be bound. We find out how they come to be bound. Book 3.
It's always book 3.
Well, and there's going to be a reason for it. There are several free magic creatures, and they're named. Or I shouldn't say creatures, beings that are named. And what we'll find out is they will to be bound. They choose to be bound in certain things. All right? Which we'll talk about when we get to that. So she gets to Mogget's, to the Aberration's house. So what do we find out about Mogget? He's a servant of Aberration. Okay, big deal. Skip all but. She gets a bath, We get the description of the sin. He's washing her breasts and everything. She's like, leave me alone, etc. They're not physical beings. But they can touch you, okay? So she has free reign of the house. She gets to go to the Aberration's library. She gets to go to all this other kind of stuff. In page 131, 130, she asks Mogget, how did you know I was coming? I mean, I didn't know myself till Father sent a message. 131, I have served 10 times as many of your forebears as you have years. She's 18. He just said, I've served 180 Aberrations. Probably longer than a year apiece. In fact, we're going to find out. He served each of those Aberrations for more, on average, than 10 years apiece. He has been bound to Aberrations for millennia. Okay? I always know when one Aberration falls and another takes their place. He's dead, Sabriel. She goes, what do you mean by fall? Did Dad break his leg? He's dead, Sabriel. Even if he hasn't passed the final gate, he will walk in life no more. She goes, no, he can't. He can't be. That's why he sent the sword and bells to you, as his aunt sent them to him in her time. He wasn't a necromancer. He was Aberration. I don't understand. I don't know enough about anything. She's read the book. She ought to know something. The Old Kingdom, Charter Magic. Why do you say his name? It is a title. His name isn't Aberration. You are Aberration. He tries to get her to see. Skip over the next page, bottom of 133. Father is not yet truly dead. I felt his presence. He trapped me on many gates. I could... No, you mustn't. He wouldn't want you to. If she were to bring him back now, what would she bring back?
Not her father.
Yeah.
Pieces of them.
Kind of Ghost of Christmas Future, the decaying Charles Dickens thing. He says, your Aberration must put the dead to rest. Your path is chosen. I can walk a different path. I can choose something different. Mogget, starts to say it and says, do as you will. Why should I gainsay you? I'm but a slave, bound to service. Why would I weep if Aberration falls to evil? It is your father who would curse you, and your mother too, and the dead who will be married. But I don't think his spirit felt, his spirit's not gone. Would I still be reviled if I brought him back? No, but he has sent the sword and bells. In other words, that's how you should know. Let me be. You are only wishing that he lives. I feel it, and I must find if my feeling is true. He says, okay. Perhaps it is so. Maybe you're right. I've grown dull. This collar strangles me. It chokes my wits. She says, help me, Mogget. Well, what's Mogget saying? Help me, Sabriel. Just loosen the collar a little bit. She reaches down and scratches. I need to know so much. I am the servant of Aberration, 135. You are Aberration, so I have to help you. But you have to promise me, you will not raise your father. If his body is dead, truly he would not wish it. She goes, I can't promise you. I'll listen to you if you're by me. Okay. So, page 135. Mogget says, it's true you are sadly ignorant, or you would promise with a will. That is, if you really knew what we were talking about, you wouldn't have any hesitation. Your father should never have sent you beyond the wall. Why did he? Come on, you can tell me this. Necessity. Now, what does necessity mean? He had to. Something forced him, not some other power, but he felt a moral force to do this. He was afraid. You were safer in what's he afraid of? Eat your fish. We'll talk later. Okay? So, she finds the book again. Book of the Dead. Page 139. He says, take care you do not read too much. I've read it all already. She goes, yeah. Not the same book. Like me, it is several things at once. So she says, I have a plan. Find my father's body first, etc., etc. So, page 140. Mogget says, a messenger came to me about 3 weeks ago. Came from Belisar. It's a city way up north. Begging for his help. That is, Aberration. Something dead, something that could pass the wards was preying on them. Aberration, I mean the previous Aberration, your father, he went. Belisar. And that's when he tells her it's a town, it was a kingdom, etc. So he teaches her a little history. Why doesn't she know this? What kind of history does she know? Ancestry. There hasn't been a king or queen for 200 years, not even a regent for 20. That's why the kingdom sinks day by day into a darkness from which no one will rise. In other words, all hell is breaking loose. She says the charter crumbles too. Without a ruler, charter stones broken one by one with blood, one of a great charter. Notice what that implies. In order for the charter to continue existing, there must be a king or a queen. There must be a ruler. It's like hierarchy is written into the nature of things, he suggested. Okay? She says, what do you mean, one of the great charters? I mean, I know of charters, but what's one of the great charters? She never heard. And he's like, I can't tell you. I'd like to. It's the binding that he is under won't allow him to. Okay? We're going to hear some about the Great Charter later. Definitely, we'll hear a lot about it before the end of the book. So, she looks outside, and what does she see? Where do we go? The Morrigan's still here. And what's he doing? He has terrorized people so that living human beings are bringing dirt and putting it here. What kind of dirt? Grave dirt. They're taking dirt from graves and piling it. Why? Why from graves?
So it negates the water.
Where the dead are. It's like dead dirt. Okay? Dead asphalt, if you want. Going to make a highway for the dead. And she realizes it won't be long. They'll get across, and then he'll get across. Okay? Grave dirt. I had forgotten. It could negate the running water, page 147. I thought I'd be safe here for a time. Margaret, yeah, you are. Till tomorrow evening. So you got like 36 hours at most. She talks about the thing she slew at Cloven Crest. It mentioned Caragor, 148. Do you know that name? I know it. It's like he says the name. You know, it's one of those things I can't tell you about. So, they leave. How do they leave? Paper airplane. Paper wing is what it's called. Page 156. Right in the middle of the page. If she was now Aborson, who was her father? Had he too once had a name that was lost in the responsibility of being Aborson? Yes, he did, and we will hear his name. Okay. Everything that had seemed so certain and solid in her life a few days ago was crumbling. She didn't even know who she was, really. Trouble seemed to beset her from all sides. Even a supposed servant of Aborson like Margaret seemed to provide more trouble than service. Oh, just wait. Okay. So, they're going to take the paper wing and they're going to fly north to Belisar to try to find her father. Page 163. But before they leave, Margaret says, bottom of 162, sorry. Almost forgot. You'll need this if I'm to come with you. What is it? She bends down and she picks up a little ring. Small silver ring, ruby gripped between two silver claws that grew out of the band. So she says, what is it? He says, old. She means, what type of thing is this? It's obviously a ring. He replies, old. You'll know if you need to use it. Put it on. Notice what that tells us. It's not just a piece of jewelry for her to walk around and flash. She looks at it. It looked and felt quite ordinary. No charter marks on the stone or band. No emanations or auras. She puts it on. And as soon as she puts it on, she feels like she's falling into a void. Or she feels like she's falling into something. Where has this happened before? She reaches up and touches the charter mark on Colonel Horace's head, and he touches her. She feels like she falls into the charter. Here, everything was gone, all light, all substance. Then charter marks suddenly exploded all around her, and she felt gripped by them, halting her headlong fall into nothing, accelerating her back into her body, back to the world of life and death. Free magic. Free magic connected to the charter. I don't understand. Why? Because we talked about free magic as being what? Uncontrollable, radical, unbound. Charter, just the very word implies what?
Control.
Order, control, bound. It's in sequence. It has a beginning and an end, so to speak. So this ring that she now has on her finger is both free magic and charter. And it seems that up until this point, all of her teaching and education told her the two cannot be combined. The two cannot be together. I don't understand. You'll know if you need to use it. Don't worry about it till then. Notice what he doesn't do. Well, if you should ever have to take my collar off me and I get freed, and I should, I don't know, pull you to myself and try to eat you, you might want to take that ring off your finger because it will expand into like a collar and slip it over my head at that. Doesn't do any of that. Okay? But that's exactly what's going to happen. Because they get in the paper wing.
Why doesn't he tell him?
Pardon?
Why doesn't the cat tell Zero?
I don't know. Why do you think he doesn't?
He doesn't want it on.
He doesn't want it on, yeah.
Doesn't he also want it on at the same time?
That's an interesting question, which we don't get answered about Mogget, really, until the end of book 3, when we find out what Mogget really is. Okay?
Don't they tell you
Nope.
in this one?
Nope, not Mogget. I mean, we're told he's a free magic creature.
What about the albino one?
That is Mogget. He takes many forms.
Oh, okay.
Dwarf, albino dwarf. Okay, so they get in the plane, they fly, and Gore Crows come after them and such. She's, creating more and more wind. And page 179. It's her first time flying. Okay, and they're spinning down to the ground, coming up very fast. And she hears a voice in her ear, 179, loose my collar. Loose my collar. She looks at him. She looks at the ground. She looks at him. She feels stupid, starved of oxygen. Trust me. Loose my collar and remember the ring. So, loose the collar and make sure you have the ring ready. See, that's what I find very interesting. Because he's telling her, without specifically telling her, he's suggesting to her, you can rebind me. So she swallows, closes her eyes, and pops the collar off and says, Father, forgive me. She's talking about her father, it's not Heavenly Father, Father Charter, And it was open, the collar, suddenly heavy like a lead rope or a ball and chain. Sabriel almost dropped it. It became light again, then insubstantial. When she opened her eyes, the collar was gone. Mogget's still in her lap. Seemed unchanged, but then there's no longer a cap there. There's just a blur of light. And what does he do? He goes out to the two wings and he goes forward aft. And he slows down the plane. They land. Not gently, but they land. Chapter 12. She regains consciousness, so she was knocked out. In 184. She looks around, she's wondering where Mogget is. That reminds her, get the sword and bells. Notice what she doesn't think about. She She doesn't think of the ring. Okay? She sees the paper wing. She apologizes to it. And we hear a voice. Sentiment Abhorsen. Sounds like Maggot and yet not like him. Harsh, etc. And then she realizes this Maggot thing's a free magic thing. She couldn't look at it directly, 186. But from the corners of her arm-shielded eyes, she's looking at it like this. She sees something human in shape, taller than her, thin, starved, no legs, torso and head writhing, etc. Free save for the blood price. Blood price kind of sounds like, I need blood. Something's got to pay me. Sabriel had no doubt about what the meaning of blood price was and who would pay it. So she summons up 3 charter marks and sends these things at him like, ninja stars. And he bats them away and laughs. Because she's like what? To this thing. What is it Megatron says when they're battling in the one city and there's a human? He goes, puny scum or something like that. That's kind of what she is to Maggot. She thinks maybe one of the bells. Okay? Keep thinking, Abhorsen. Such a pity your head doesn't work too well. 188. Now, I think that's, I don't know what you want to call it. The good Maggot, the good part of Maggot, if there is a good part of Maggot, saying, keep thinking, it'll come to you in a moment. It might be too late, of course. I might eat you before then. This thing break the paper wing, she says. Sentiment, a memory now purged. It's like the longer the Maggot thing is free of its binding, the more and more and more of its memory of its enslavement is lost. Or, another way of putting it, the more and more its memory of its service to the Abhorsens and its sentiment toward the Abhorsens is lost. Memories. So what kind of memories does he talk about? Millennia of servitude, chained by trickery, treachery, captive in a repulsive, fixed flesh shape. Oh, there's going to be payment, but it's not going to be quick. No. You're going to suffer. How's she going to suffer? He says, I think I'll start with the eyes. And it smacks her across the face with a tendril of light. Does it again. And then it pins her to him. Another arm, page 190, grips the back of her helmet, forcing her to look up. And it was then her tired, concussed mind remembers the ring. So it's got this arm pinned, but this arm's free. This arm just happens to be the one with the ring. And so it tilts her head back because it's opening his mouth, and he's going to come down and he's going to chew on an eye. The ring felt loose on her finger. Sabriel instinctively curled her hand. The ring felt looser still. That's it. She lets it slip down into her hand. Expanding, growing, till without looking, she knew she had a silver hoop, as wider than the creature's head. First, the plucking of an eye, said the thing. Tilted its head sideways, opens its mouth, gets closer. So its head's now tilted sideways. Her hand's here. She reaches her hand up and drops the loop over. For a second, as the heat increased and she felt a terrible burning pain against her eye, Sabriel thought she missed. Then the hoop was wrenched from her hand and she's thrown away. The ring was shrinking. No! Page 193. And then the silver ring contracted once more, and a terrible shout of anguish, rage, and despair came from the very center of the white flaming thing. Its arm suddenly shrank, and there's the cat. With a single, still large silver band around the middle, the ruby glittering like a drop of blood. And what does the cat do? It comes up to her and goes, BAM! And coughs up a ring. The ring hummed in answer to the bell and exuded a pear-shaped drop of its own metal, which cooled to become a miniature serenade. At the same time, the ring changed color and consistency. Welcome back, Maggot, she says. Now, that could only happen because when they left, He said, you might need this. Meaning, you might need to unbind me, and I'm going to give you the way to rebind me. Does he give her the way to rebind him because that's part of his binding? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Okay? So, what do they discover? They're in a big sinkhole, right? I mean, they've been flying over, and there's this big depression, and down in this area is where they find several ships. It's like a dry dock. And they go wander among them. Turn page. And there's 14, page 202, open deck, single-masted longboats. Okay. Page 204. Third ship's a little different than the other two. The others have figureheads, imposing men. Third one's different. She drops her pack. Young man, naked young man, carved in perfect detail. Sabriel blushes a little. Okay. Lean muscle. He's ripped, man. And too lifelike, she says. Stepping back from the figurehead, 205. Hand falling to the hilt of her sword, her magical senses reaching out, seeking some. That is, she looks at this one and she goes, this is not a carving like those other two. This is different. She doesn't know what. Okay? She tries to identify it. She looks over the figurehead again, examining every part of him from every angle. She gets embarrassed again. Okay? And she realizes this guy's real, first of all. But he's not dead, he's just trapped. You're the victim of some free magic spell and necromantic trickery, bottom of 206. She's sure her father would free the man. That's what he did. That's what he lived for. So she's thinking, what should I do? So she takes out Rana. She goes into death. And page 210, she sees the man. She grabs him. She pulls him back. And I'm skipping a bunch. They kind of get attacked. And page 214. She brings him back. The man's spirit was back where it belonged, back in life. And she's like, okay, now what do I do? Touch him with the sword, hit him with a bell. Maggid. Well, what do you usually do in a fairy tale when you have somebody who is under a sleeping curse? A kiss, says Maggid. Or actually, you could just breathe on him. But you have to start kissing someone sometime, I suppose. I mean, you're 18. She goes, a breath? Really? So she goes up and, like this. And a small sound interrupted her. It's a wheezing sound. The figurehead's breathing. So yeah, that's what did it. He wakes up. She lowers him to the ground. Again, he's still stark naked. He hasn't magically had clothes appear. And he says, thank you, Aberration. And then falls asleep. She looks down at him, trying to ignore curiously fond feelings that had appeared from somewhere. Well, why curiously fond feelings that appeared from somewhere? She's 18. He's probably somewhere right around the same age. He's pretty good looking, and she just saved his life. Feelings similar to those that had made, I should get him a blanket and some clothes. Okay? And Maggid says, page 217, so, and we have no idea what that means. Well, who is this? Or what does he call himself? Touchstone. Why Touchstone? The name of a famous fool in one of Shakespeare's plays. As You Like It, in fact. Just taught that play. Okay? It means fool. Well, what kind of person calls himself a fool?
Someone's full of regret.
Someone full of regret?
Fool.
maybe a fool, a real fool, right? But he doesn't look like a real fool, because a real fool doesn't usually look like Chris Hemsworth. I mean, the third Hemsworth, maybe. Not Liam, the fat, like accountant Hemsworth. There's 3 brothers. One of them is not famous at all. He's like short and fat and literally an accountant or something. Okay? So, Touchstone says, yeah, I remember my name, but you can call me Touchstone. Okay? Margaret, you can't say your name, can you? That's part of the spell. It's part of the binding. Okay? So, yes. How's the kingdom? There is no kingdom. Regency, then. Okay, so there's not a king. Who's the regent? No regent. Page 222. Well, there was one at first, but regency lasted for 180 years. So when he asks, who's king? Margaret says there is no king. Okay, who's regent? There hasn't been a regent for 20 years. There was a regent for 180 years. What are we immediately meant to figure out? This guy's been on this boat for 200 years. Since the last time there was a king or queen. The family, that is the royal family, all dead. Past the final date. Save one who should be. You know who I mean. Who do we think that means?
The guy that villain that's in the prologue, I forgot his name already.
Caragor. And that's who it is. Only thing is, he's not the only one. Margaret doesn't know who this person is. He has an idea, but he's not sure. Okay? So, they talk a lot. So, what does Touchstone say he's going to do for Sabriel? He's going to be her servant. She doesn't like that. He calls her my lady. She doesn't want to be called my lady. Why? She's a thoroughly modern, emancipated woman. Just call me Sabriel. You can't call her that because that's not her name. Her name is Abhorsen. Okay? He's a charter mage, we're told. He remembers there was an attack on the queen. Okay? But he doesn't say much else. So, they leave from there, and he talks about probably where her father is. Underneath the palace, there was a reservoir, pages 232, 33. A hidden stair to the north of King General's ship. Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, he's talking about how to get out from the sinkhole where they are. Okay, so they climb up, they go out, they try to figure out how to get to Belisar. They go to the nearby town, and I'm going to skip a bunch, okay? And what do they find in the nearby fishing town? Where are all the people?
Dead.
The ones that are still in the town are dead. Where are all the living ones?
They're on like another island.
They're living on an island. Why? Because the island's surrounded by rushing water, ocean water. It's moving. Who's in the town? The living dead, okay? And there's a dead person among those out on the island, too. Let's see here. Like I said, I'm skipping on. It's stuff that I don't usually skip. So they go to the town because they want to try and get a boat because Touchstone says the quickest way to get to Belisar would be by sea. They do another funeral, page 255. They bury a charter mage, a woman. Okay. She realizes he's powerful. That is Touchstone. Shouldn't really be called fool. And they help the people on the island by taking care of the dead thing that's inhabiting the guy. Okay. And they take the boat. I'm skipping a bunch again. And they said, what? They'll come back, if they can, and take care of all the dead so that they can go back to their normal lives. 278, 279 and following. Sabriel realizes what's been following since they left the Abhorson's house? The Mordecant. And so she asked Touchstone, can you sail a boat by night? As we're going to leave now. We're not going to wait. He said, yeah. He says it'll be much more dangerous. I don't know this coast. The night is very dark. Margaret can see in the dark. We have to leave immediately. A Mordecant has come, the same one that pursued me before. What about the people here? It's after me. If I leave, it'll try to follow us. It can feel my presence as I feel it. When I go, it will follow. Okay? So they tell the people that are on the island what they need to do and why they need to leave, etc. They give them the boat, and they go off to sea. Page 284. Just before they do, though, they speak to a little girl. And this is where we get some of our all-important background information. Exposition that's needed. Second to last person in the line was a little girl, her black hair tied in two plaits, one on either side of her head. Seeing her made Sabriel remember something, Touchstone had said. She stopped and took the girl's hands in her own. So it's kind of like she gets down on her knees and holds the little girl's hand. What's your name, little one? Eileen, her eyes bright and lively. Tell me what you have learned in your lessons about the Great Charter. Because earlier, she talked with Margaret, and she asked, what's the Great Charter? And he's like, what'd you learn in that school? And the little girl says, I know the rhyme. Shall I sing it like we do in class? We dance around the stone, too. That is the charter stone in the town. 5 great charters knit the land. Remove the gates of death. 5 great charters knit the land. So you have 5 great charters. Okay? Knit the land, linked together hand in hand. One in the people who wear the crown, which is what? Royalty. So one of the charters is in the royalty. 2 in the folk who keep the dead down. 2 in Abhorsons. 3 and 5 became stone and mortar. That's charter stones and the wall. Right? Or it's just the wall. 4 sees all in frozen water. And at this point, you can't say anything about that, but I will. Those are the Clare. Go back for just a second to your map right here. The Clares Glacier is way up here. Okay? So the charter, the Great Charter, lives in these. One of the charters, 1/5 of the charter, is in the royalty. 2 of it is in Abhorsons. 3 and 5 are in the Charterstone's wall. 4 is in the Clare. Notice 2 of the charters are in Abhorson. 2 of the charters are in the Charterstones in the wall. So it's like these 2 have more of the charters than these. That kind of makes them more powerful per se.
Aren't there only technically 1 Abhorson at a time?
Yes, there is. So that's what I mean. 2 in whoever the Abhorson is at the time. Okay? That's just Abhorson's sequentially, not more than one. So, Mogget says, so now you know. I still can't tell you, but you know one's in your blood. Right? Sabriel says, no, two. Mogget said, you got one charter, and you go, no, two. Two of the folk who keep the dead down. So, I can't talk about it either. One of the great charters lay in the royal blood. The second lay in Abhorson's. Sorry, I don't mean two, and then this is the first one. The second one's in Abhorson's. The third and fifth one are in the Charterstone's wall. The fourth one's in the... Sorry, brain fart.
Are they equal?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. What were 3 and 5? And 4 that saw all in frozen water. She felt certain many answers could be found in Belisar. Okay? So, they keep going off to sea. And Touchstone warns them about what's going to happen. You know, when we get to the port of Belisar, there's going to be a chain across the harbor. We got to hope that the chain's down or we won't be able to go in. But what happens as they get out to sea? Well, Mogget's a little more able to speak. Touchstone is a little more able to speak. Page 298. Touchstone says, I don't know how much I can tell you because it involves the Great Charter. Where do I start? With the Queen, I guess. She had 4 children. Her oldest son, Roger, was a childhood playmate of mine. He was always the leader in all our games. Now I know that those interests, I went into the guard, he pursued his own interests. Those interests were free magic and necromancy. Towards the end, a few months before it happened, well, Roger'd been away for several years. He came back, and he didn't quite look like the Roger we were used to seeing. Kind of like, and I don't know that this is the case, but I start to wonder, kind of like when Lord Voldemort leaves Hogwarts and he comes back several years later and asks for a teaching job, and Dumbledore's like, you look a little different. Well, why does he look a little different? Because he's been killing people and horcruxing his soul. Okay? So, he says, late one afternoon, cold, crisp Sunday afternoon, I was on duty guarding the queen and her ladies. They were playing. Roger came to her, asked her to come with him down to the place where the great stones are, and he realizes, I can say it. I can talk. Mogget, yeah, the sea washes all things clear. We can speak of the great charters. I'd forgotten. Yes.
I don't understand what's restricted them. Just the charter in general? Or is that something? Because if it's going to be explained later on, then I don't want
No, this part isn't. It's not explained how the sea, what he means by washes all things clear.
Well, if it's the charter, then that would make sense because Sabriel has part of the charter in her.
Right.
And we come to know that.
I just don't understand what's restricting them from speaking about it.
They're binding.
They're binding?
They're binding. Mogget's binding. Okay?
And
And Touchstone has a binding still. Even though he's returned to his form, the binding does wear off on Touchstone. He will finally, ultimately, be able to say something because he's going to have something happen to him in not very long. He's going to enter berserker mode. Good old Norse bear shirt. That's what berserker
But
means.
Sabriel can't talk about it either.
No, she can't. That's part of the nature of the Abhorsen. Well, she also doesn't know.
yeah, I thought it was because she doesn't know.
Part of it she can't say. Part of it she doesn't know. I mean, she didn't even know what the Great Charter was. Okay? So, he realizes I can speak. Sabriel, come on, tell me. Let's take advantage while we can. So he says, well, the people. So notice Sabriel leaves the story. Roger led his mother down to the great stones under the palace. Hey, I can speak. Sabriel says, let's go back to the Great Charter. 3 and 5, 4. Now she can speak. The great stones would be the stones and mortar of the Rhine, the 3rd and 5th Great Charter, right? Yes, with the wall. So these are the great charter stones and the stones in mortar of the wall. The people, wherever they were, who made the great charters, put 3 in bloodlines, 2 in physical constructions, right? 1, 2, 3, these are bloodlines. These are the physical things. All the lesser stones draw their power from those. The great stones, well, Roger came and said there was something amiss there. So he took his mother down. She was a charter mage. She felt nothing wrong. Okay. She told him to wait till morning. Roger turned to me, asked me to intercede. And Charter, help me? It's like, God, forgive me? I did. I trusted him. My belief convinced the queen. I helped him lead the queen down. And what are we told? There was terrible wrong down there, but it was Roger's doing, not his discovery. There were 6 great stones. 2 were just being broken with the blood of his own sisters. I saw their last seconds, the fate, hope in their eyes. The queen's barge came floating across. She gets killed. So you didn't tell me the truth back at Whole Hollow. Queen didn't survive. No, I didn't, but I didn't mean to lie. It was all doubled up. Well, what happened? 2 other guards were Roger's men. They attacked me. I went mad, battle mad, berserk. I killed both guards. Roger jumped from the barge, wading to the stones. He says, I stopped him. Okay. When I came to, I was a frozen man. Or, you woke me up. You should have told me. But he just said, I couldn't have told you. I didn't remember any of this. Perhaps it had to wait for the sea's freeing of that binding spell. Tell me, the man with the sword and bells, was it the Aberration? Touchstone. Probably. Who else wears a sword and bells? Well, necromancers use bells. So they turned to Mogget. You were there too, weren't you, Mogget? Yes, I was. With the Aberration of that time, a very powerful charter mage, blah, 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 blah. What happened? Roger was already one of the dead when he came back to Belisar. That is, he willingly went into the dead and came back kind of transformed. Nobody was pulling his strings. Okay? So, somewhere along the path of his studies, 303, he'd swapped real life for power, and like all the dead, he needed to take life all the time to stay out of death. That is, he'd become dead. Why? Because he could get power. But to be out in this world of the living, he had to keep taking life from others in order to remain.
What's the difference between the Aberration and that? Because they go into dead too. Why do they?
They go into the dead to take the dead and send them all the way past the night gate. He went into death to get power, to come back out and live here and control others.
So is the reasoning
Yeah.
simply?
Aberrations are there to serve and help others. Karagor and others like him are there to serve and help whom?
Themselves, but they go to the same place, correct?
Yes.
Well, the horses are more like going there and binding souls, while he's forcing souls there.
To do his bidding.
Yeah.
And to be sources of power, essentially, for him. Okay?
Since he has ill will, that's why. Okay.
So, page 304, they're talking about Karagor, and Chabriel's like, he succeeded. He hesitated. He's been trying to come back to life, and he's come back. He's the thing called Karagor, the one Aberrations have been fighting for generations. Mogget, I don't know, your father thought so. Touchstone, it's him. Karagor was his childhood nickname. I made it up on the day we had the mud fight. His full ceremonial name was Rogerek, and he just reverses the name. Okay? So Mogget says his body must be near the wall. Why is that going to become important? Because in order to send him fully into the dead, they've got to destroy his body. As long as his body still exists, he can live. Okay? It's in a sarcophagus, so it doesn't rot. So, page 306. Who put my spirit in death and made my body the figurehead? Mogget, I never knew what happened to you. Must have been Aberration. You were insane when we got you out of the reservoir, driven mad, etc., etc. And then he says, the binding resumes. And Sabriel, no. Big question. And I know the answer. The answer has to do with plot. Why not just wait a couple hours before sailing into the harbor and stay out in the ocean and get all the talking out? Well, it's because of the plot. Okay. But to me, that's a plot hole. If all it takes for them to be able to speak is to stay out in the open ocean, then stay out in the open ocean. There's not a rational answer given for why they don't do that. Okay? Would make it more plausible if they did. So, they go into Belissaire. What time is it? 8:06. And we're going to skip a bunch. Sabriel says, 3:20. My father's probably under the palace that is in the reservoir somewhere. That's where he would have gone. So Touchstone says, okay, so I know how we can get there. We've got to find father's body, bring it back to safety here, Sabriel says, and take things from there. What she means is, we've got to find his body, bring it back, why? So it can be properly disposed of, properly buried. Not bring him back so that we can bring his spirit, So, they make their way to the palace, and what do they see while they do? What are children being used for? Bait. Okay? But we're going to skip all that. They get to the reservoir. Page 332. Sabriel tells Touchstone, you don't have to do this. I mean, it's powerful memories. I understand it. If this is going to be too much for you, if it's going to disturb you, you can wait out here. He's like, no, I have to. I'll never be free of my memories otherwise. In other words, his memories will do what to him? And what can memories do for all of us? And I think this is what Nix wants us to think by this. They become a form of binding. They control us. Okay? We don't allow ourselves freedom from those memories or thoughts. Okay? I'll never be free of my memories otherwise. I have to do something. I have to make new memories. I have to overcome this problem. I need to seek redemption. What's he need redemption for?
He blames himself for the queen's death.
Yeah.
He talked his... Well, he doesn't say this yet. He talks her to going down there. Is he the queen's daughter? Son, sorry. Don't mean to go trans on you there. No, he's the king's son.
Wait, later it says they share the same mother.
Yeah, but he's the bastard.
That's right. He is her. She is his mother. He is her son by a different father than Caragor. Okay. She was, playing around. So, I'm still a member of the Royal Guard. Notice he doesn't out himself there. Okay? I am too in a strange sort of way, said Touchstone. Sabriel says, I'm glad you're here. He says, I'm glad you're here. They're both glad each other are there. So they get down to the reservoir. Page 333. She smelled it before she saw it. Somewhere around the 39th step. A chill, damp smell that cut into her nose and lungs and filled her with the impression of a cold expanse. Now, I never thought about this before. I do have it noted in here. So it takes 39 steps. So from the top level, you go down 39 steps, and then what do you have? The water of the reservoir. So the water of the reservoir is what? It's like the 40th step. Okay?
Is it the water in the reservoir or is it the smell?
Well, it's the water smells. But there's 39 steps down to, and then you take one more step and you're in the water, is what I'm getting at. Why is that possibly significant? Well, Dante's Divine Comedy, in the Inferno, let me back up. Dante's Divine Comedy is made up of 3 books. Each book has 33 cantos. Cantos are like chapters. It's a poem. It's a big, massive, long poem. I might be teaching it in next fall. Okay. And there's then also a kind of a prologue, which is like the 40th. Now, I don't know that Nix is doing that because what are they doing as they go down? Well, they got to get to the water, to the reservoir, which is kind of like entering hell. Okay? They get down to the water. It smells. And Sabriel, the broken stones, give her the willies, because that's never good. So what do they have to do when they get in there? Is Touchstone going to go into death? No, he's not a necromancer. He's a charter mage, he's powerful, but he doesn't go into death. Is Mogget going to go into death? No, because Mogget's not really alive. Death, life, they don't really apply to whatever this Mogget thing is. So Sabriel is, so what does she have to do? Page 340, just like she did over here earlier. They got to do a diamond of protection. Only now, who's making the diamond? It's she and Touchstone. Okay, and he's powerful, we're told. Okay? So, they asked Mogget, she says, we should be able to combine our strengths. If you and Mogget keep watch while I'm in death, we should manage. Touchstone, what do you think, Mogget? Page 341. And we're told, Mogget, I have my own troubles. I think this is probably a trap, but since we're here, and the abhorrent Emeritus, the dead one, shall we say, does seem to be alive, I suppose there's nothing else to be done. What's he mean, I have my own troubles? It's almost like he's a little preoccupied at this point. Like he's maybe thinking ahead a bit. Okay? So Touchstone's like, I don't like this. She says, put your sword away, 342. Give me your hand. He hesitates, but he does. She tells Mogget to keep watch. Pain shot through his hand and arm as he added his will to Sabriel's. So the east mark flows down Sabriel's blade, takes root. They do the south, it fixes. They do the west, it fixes. Sabriel's hand was hot and feverish now. Touchstone's flesh ricocheted violently between sweating heat and shivering cold. Sabriel lost concentration for a moment, so Touchstone had to hold the mark alone. Then she forced herself back, and the west mark flowed under the water. Desperation gave them the north mark. They struggled with it. Now they've got it all set. So they're in the water, and there's fire making this diamond along the surface of the water. Okay? They felt a lessening of the terrible presence of the broken stones. That is, within this diamond of protection, it's like they can let their guard down just a little bit. So, she looks at Touchstone when he says, I don't know how we did that. Page 345. Startled, he found himself staring at the reflection of his candle flame in her dark eyes. So he's holding the candle. He sees the reflection of the flame in her eyes. Almost for the first time, he really looked at her. He sees weariness, the incipient lines of care, the way her mouth looked a little sad around the edges. Her nose is still swollen, and there were yellowy bruises on her cheekbones. Why? Why is her nose swollen, and why did she have bruises on her cheekbones?
The crash.
What happened in the crash? It's not from the crash. That's when the unbound Mogget tendrils slapped her across the face. She was so beautiful, and Touchstone realized he had thought of her only in terms of her office. In other words, that's a woman. That's a woman. And she says, I better be going, because she realizes he's staring at her. Well, she stared at him, several times when he was stark naked. Touchstone says, let me help. She looks down at his hair, at his hair, was strangely tempted to kiss the exact center of tiny, but she didn't. Controls herself, got bigger fish to fry, so to speak. Touchstone, I'll be waiting. What time is it? Mogget. And I'll wait too, it seems, unless I want to swim out of here. Okay? So, he kisses her on the cheek, for luck, calls her by her name, and she goes into death. Okay? We're going to skip a bunch. She sees things, she, has little difficulties. Meanwhile, 353, back up on top of the surface, Mogget and Touchstone talk. And Mogget's like, see anything? Touchstone, see anything? Mogget, 354, yeah, the dead. They're coming down the steps and they're filing around the reservoir, lining up each side of the door. What kind of dead are they? Does it really matter? I mean, hands were the worst of the normal variety. Mordicants, like the ones. Hands, all hands, pretty putrescent ones, falling apart just walking. Mogget, they're lining up along the walls like an honor guard. What are they getting ready to do? Like when the president, visits a foreign nation, what does every stinking country do? They line up a bunch of their elite soldiers so that the president, even if the president doesn't know jack squat about military protocol, can go, yeah, you look good, you look good, you look good. This is going to be what, though? These putrescent dead honoring Caragor when he comes by. Okay? And we're going to see Caragor, and we get a description of him. Touchstone, he's coming. Meanwhile, back underneath the water, she could feel her father's spirit close. Page 357. She feels an urge to walk to the next gate, 358. Something calling her from them. 359, we're back at the top. Okay. They talk about sunlight and such. And Touchstone says, when do you think he will come? Soon. In other words, it's a trap. Okay. What can we do? 360. Touchstone asks, defend ourselves if we're attacked. Hope. Pray to the charter that Caragor doesn't come before Sabriel returns. What if he does? What if he does? And Mogget is quiet. And because he's quiet, that kind of implies, put your head between your legs and kiss your, goodbye. Because meanwhile, she cries out, Father, and she sees her father. And he says, page 363, I both hoped and feared you would come. And she breaks out crying. He says, shh, no time for tears. Where's your physical body? Upstairs in the reservoir. Diamond of protection. The dead, Caragor, weren't there when I left. Somewhere in life, don't know where. So they talk a little bit. And he says, okay, you remember the Book of the Dead, right? You got all your bells? Yep. Subconsciously, 364, she had always been aware that Abhorson's spirit had been too long from his body, too deep in the realm of death. He can't come back. So she swings the bells, 365, and at the same time her father was emerging from the waterfall of the fourth gate. His head was freed first. He flexed his neck, then rolled his shoulders, raised his arms over his head, and stretched. Still she steps on. Then Abhorson was free. He leaped forward, thrusting his hands into the bell mouths, that is, shutting them. He says, once trapped, it was all I could do to send the bells and sword. Page 366. We got to hurry. Caragor's, plan. We got to stop him. 367. She wants to sit and talk. What is happening? What is Caragor's plan? I don't understand. Why wasn't I brought up here? So I would know things. Here? She doesn't mean here, physically. She means here, the old kingdom. What? There's no simple answer. That means we don't have time. You don't get the answers you want at this point. I sent you to Ancelstier for two main reasons, page 367. One was to keep you safe. I'd already lost your mother. The only way to keep you safe in the old kingdom was to keep you either with me or always at our house, a prisoner. Couldn't keep you with me. Things were getting worse. Second reason, the Claire advised me to do so. The Claire. the people in whom one of the charters is in their blood. Now, the thing you need to know about declare, it's not really told yet, is they see the future. The only problem is they don't always know what it is they see. And they don't know necessarily if it's a future that really is or just a future that it might be. Well, what's the problem with that? You might do something and change the future. Okay? He said, I didn't know why then, but now I think I do. Why? Karagor's body. He can never be made truly dead because his body is preserved by free magic somewhere in life. It's like an anchor, etc. So, the Claire will have located it by now because Karagor must have gone to it when he merged into life. So, you going to do the spell or am I? Okay. Page 369. Karagor could never properly be dealt with till an Abhorsen found the body. All of us pushed him back at various times. As far as the seventh gate, he grew stronger. But we never got rid of him. Who's we? Sabriel asks. Top of 370. The Great Charter bloodlines, which to all intents and purposes means Abhorsens and the Clare, since the royal line is all but extinct. He doesn't know about Touchstone. And there's the relic of the Wallmakers, a sort of construct left over after they put their powers in the wall and the Great Stone. That is, the Wallmakers who put their powers into the charters, this is charters we're talking about. After they put most of their powers in the charters in the wall, there was some left over. That's a relic. What's the relic? It's not these. It's something else. So he says, bottom of 370, we have a chance finally to finish him off. The Clare will direct you to its body, you will destroy it, then you'll banish Karagor's spirit. Then you can get the surviving, he does know, the surviving royal prince out of his suspended state. She says, Whole Hallow? His spirit in death? Yeah, bastard son. It might be crazy too. She goes, yeah, I know him, Touchstone. He's waiting. He's in the reservoir. He's with Mogget. He goes, not good. Karagor lured me to this reservoir to use my blood to break a great stone, but I managed to protect myself. And what have you guys now done? You've lured the last remaining member of the royal family. That'll be good enough to break a stone. He's in the Diamond of Protection. Probably not good enough. He goes on, but who's this Mogget you're talking about? Mogget. I met him at the house. Free magic something or other. Cat. Has the miniature Sereneth. Mogget. That's the Wallmaker relic. Mogget is part of one of these. These are the most powerful, magical, whatever term you want to use, things there are. That's Mogget. Okay? That's the Wallmaker relic, or their last creation, or their child. Nobody really knows. Possibly not even him. Shape of a cat. He was always a sort of albino dwarf boy to me. Practically never left the house. He could offer some sort of protection. Okay? So they keep talking and moving. And he does what? He does what? What's he say before they do the final spells and he's released and sent off into death? What does he need to do for her to be, quote unquote, released? Freed of, as Touchstone put it, the memories. To replace bad memories, let's say. I have not been an ideal parent, I know. None of us ever are. Now, I think that's Garth Nix saying that none of us ever are. No parent is the ideal parent. Where do ideal parents live? I don't even think they live there anymore. On TV. When I grew up, Leave It to Beaver. Ward and June Cleaver were the ideal parents. You came home from school, and Mrs. Cleaver always had fresh chocolate chip cookies and milk. And I mean, everything was wonderful, perfect, middle class America. Okay? None of us ever are. But who's the us referring to? Now, I said I think that's Garth Nix talking about all parents. But here specifically, it's abhorsons. Why? When we become the abhorson, we lose much else. Responsibility to many people rides roughshod over personal responsibilities. Difficulties and enemies crush out softness. Our horizons narrow. You are my daughter, and I've always loved you. But now I live again for only a short time. 100 heartbeats. 10,000. That's a few minutes. No more. And I must win a battle against the terrible enemy. Our parts now, which perforce we must play, are not father and daughter, but one old half-orphan, one... What's he telling her? Passing the torch. What else? We don't have time for the lovey-dovey stuff. We don't have time for the father-daughter talk. Why? Time's of the essence. Why else? I've got responsibilities. You've got responsibilities. If we don't do those responsibilities, what happens? Louder, Joy. Everybody else suffers. Okay? I think Nix is saying something here, not just about abhorsons. That could apply to firefighters, cops, soldiers. What happens when you put on a uniform? Family? Family takes back seat. I mean, I had a brother-in-law who's a cop, 27 years. My sister says, every night. She always had that fear. She'd turn on the scanner. Is he coming home? And he dealt, and this is a small town in Northern California. He dealt with crazy axe murder, first one on the scene, blood, gore, 5 people, family, and PTSD, okay? So, chapter 23. Tall Beast comes in. There's Mogget, there's Touchstone, and Karagor comes in. Touchstone says he always was flamboyant. Okay? The Mordicant shows up. Page 379. And we finally hear Karagor. Did my hounds scare you, little brother? Okay. She says, something touched my body and life. I think Mogget. I wonder what's happening. So, she and her father talk some more. Talks about the paper wing. He says, give me your sword, Asterael, 7th bell, Asterael, the sorrowful, the weeper, etc., etc. She says, there has to be another way. We can all escape together. He says, nope. I've walked in death to the very precipice, page 382, of the 9th gate. I know the secrets and horrors of the 9 precincts. That is 1 through 9. He doesn't know what's after the 9th gate. I do not know what lies beyond, but everything that lives must go there in the proper time. Everything that lives must die. Really, totally, completely die. That is the rule that governs our work as the abhorson, but it also governs us. I've got to die too. You are the 53rd abhorson, Sabriel. We're not told. Well, who made the first one? Because it's probably... How do we know? Because they're in the first abhorson's blood. Okay? I've not taught you as well as I should. Let this be my final lesson. They turn together. They plunge out into life. So he's carrying Asterael and her sword. What does she have? Her other bells, but no weapon. Okay? So they come out, Touchstone, thank the charter. And we hear Karagor's voice and such. And we see, page 384, Kilgore tried to make the body he currently inhabited look like the Roger of old, but either his skills, memory, or taste were sadly lacking. Kilgore stood at least 7 feet tall, his body impossibly deep-chested and narrow-waisted. What's the image?
Like what? His rib cage, and then there's like nothing. But
Cartoon figure. He's like Disney Hercules. 84-inch chest and a 22-inch waist.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's real that way. Okay, Ken and Barbie. Bigger Ken. What else? His head was too thin and too long. His mouth spread from ear to ear, Joker-like, if you want. His eyes did not bear looking at, for they were thin slits burning with free magic fires, not eyes at all. Touchstone keeps staring at him. He hears the voice. A hand grabs him. He suddenly focuses, gasps for air. He sees Sabriel. She has his sword in her right hand, and she takes his open palm in her left and starts pulling him. He sees her father, okay, and she tells him, "Run, damn you, run." So they start running. Page 388, Sabriel. Think of life. She could feel Touchstone dying, his will insufficient to hold him. Fight it, she says. Live. And he's slipping away. Okay. Why? He hears the bell. Her father rang the bell, because what does that bell do?
Takes everything.
Everything within earshot goes way into death. Okay? She's telling him to fight it. Still, he slipped away. Desperate, she grabbed him by the ears and kissed him savagely, biting his lip. Why? Is this some weird S&M thing? What's the biting do?
Wake him up.
Yeah. Fires those nerves. Salty blood filling both their mouths. His eyes clear a little. She feels him concentrate on life, living. His sword falls, and he plants one back on her, returns her kiss. He puts his head on her shoulder for a moment, she on his, and they held each other until the single note dies. Okay? What was that? She tells him. Oh, he'll come back. He says, Caragor, yeah, he'll be back. He'll always come back till his body. Your father, he's dead. Mogget? What about Mogget? Okay, what did we say Mogget was?
A great charter.
He's part of the charter. Okay? Bound for a time in this form. So, they go running, 391 while they're running. You didn't tell me you were a prince. Sorry, I didn't think about it. It wasn't important, So they go and look for the paper wing. They get attacked, and he goes crazy. That's when he goes berserk again. Okay? They run off to the paper wing. I'm going to skip a bunch. They meet the Claire. The Claire fly them, and they go down to... Skipping a bunch. They go down to the wall. Chapter 25. Okay? They meet with Colonel Horace, and 4:15, she starts to get stuff out of the paper wing that she had with her, that she had taken from Abhorson's house. Okay? Book of the Dead, some other stuff. And Horace looks at the two of them, and she asks him, 4:18, 4:19. When's the full moon? Because what did they talk about the full moon when she was last with Colonel Horace? When her father dies, that is, goes all the way, the next full moon, that's when those wind flutes will no longer bind the dead. It's tonight. She's thinking it was, 2 days ago, yesterday? Tonight. So the dead are going to rise. Okay? She says, when he says, electricity's not working for some reason, she goes, no technology's going to work tonight. There's going to be a, load of magic. And it's... So she tells him, we've got to go find Karagor's body, and I have a pretty good idea where it is. So I need you and a bunch of your charter mages to come with me. But what's he thinking? He's the colonel. He's in charge of this garrison. He's got to defend this territory. She's like, no, believe me, buddy. There's going to be no defending here. All right? Page 421 and following. They talked to him about Karagor. He says, your father mentioned him once. He's one of the greater dead, etc., etc. He'll come tonight with an army of the dead, 422. She tells him Karagor's body is in a spelled sarcophagus under a cairn top a little hill called Docky Point, 40 miles away. We got to get there. We got to destroy the body. Well, how are they going to get there? They're on this side of the wall, which means no more paper airplane flying. Got to get a truck. Okay. Horace says, I can't leave the perimeter garrison unguarded. You won't have a choice, she says. So, 425, he says, I can give you 12 charter mages, etc. She goes, you've got to come, you're the strongest one. Pushy little, what isn't she, She's 18, she gets all this power. He says, okay, 427. They get in the car together. Sabriel, are you coming with us? Yes. Yes, I am. Touchstone, you have the sight. What did you see? The usual thing. He gets in the front seat, nods to the driver. Sabriel, what do you mean? Her question was lost. Touchstone jumps at the sound of the noise because he's never been in a car before. She turns, what did he mean? The usual thing. He looks at her, sadness, exhaustion, vying for first place in his gaze. He takes her hand in his own and puts a short line across the hand meaning death. He could have done, he sees it. He sees it coming. And he does what? He goes. He knows what's going to happen. Oh, she sniffs. She looks at the back of his head. What's she thinking about? He's got a daughter my age. Well, she just lost her father. His daughter's about to lose hers. His daughter's about to lose her father. Get my pronouns all messed up. Why, oh why does everything, everyone, what? It's not finished. What's the question? Die. Why does everyone die? Sabriel was silent for the first 10 miles, her head bowed, hands still clutching tightly on touchstones. And they keep driving, and she's like, it's okay, you can let go of my hand now. He smiles, he reflexes, he moves his hand, and their hands just lay there on the benches, fingers touching. They finally get to where they need to go. They dig up the sarcophagus. Page 434, 435. Touchstone says, going back up, Sabriel says, I'd like to have seen you in the royal guard. In the old kingdom, before the stones were broken. Read into it a little bit. What's she saying? I would have liked to have seen you in the royal guard.
Possibly been with him.
Yeah, that comes later. Ooh, I bet you'd look good in a uniform. Woo! Like a Marine, Touchstone. In my day, you mean, I would have liked that too. It was more like here then. Here, normally, peaceful, sort of slow. Sometimes I thought life was too slow, too predictable. In The Lord of the Rings, Sam and Frodo have a talk about stories. And Sam says, I used to think heroic tales were all about people who went out looking for stuff to do. It's not like that in the real stories. They just found themselves plopped in the middle.
You say that in the Chronicles of Verdane too.
Yeah.
Somewhere in
Yeah, I mean, Karen says that. Okay? And his point is, the real heroic stories are the people who are thrust into situations who don't want it. That's why Call wants nothing more. Go back and dig the dadgum turnips. Okay? Sabriel, I used to think that at school. 18, 17, life's boring, man. When's it really going to get fun? Dreaming about the old kingdom, proper charter magic, dead to bind, princes to be. And he says, rescued? She rescued him. She says, married. He's probably going, what? Huh? Absently, she seemed intent on watching Horace. Notice she's not looking at Touchstone when she says that. Touchstone didn't speak. Everything, notice, seemed to sharpen in focus for him, centering on Sabriel. She mentions that word, and it's like, the light bulb goes off. He realizes, I love her. And he tells her, I love you. Hope you don't mind. I don't mind. Leans towards him. I think I might love you too. Charter, help me. But now is not the time. I mean, you're going to have a shotgun, not the other kind of shotgun wedding, because this is a real shotgun wedding, because the guns are about to start firing. Okay? It's like, if only we'd found each other when? Sooner in that other peaceful world that doesn't exist. Okay? So, let's skip a bunch. They look at the dark hole, 443, in the cairn. And they bring more charter mages in. They try to take the sarcophagus, and all hell breaks loose. They get to the college, and Sabriel enlists all the upper level students who've been taught charter magic and such. Page 459. She has her bells, 6 of them, because what happened to the 7th? That person either took it into the death with him, or when he died, it fell into the reservoir. And an unfamiliar sword, strange to her touch, even if it was forged by the wallmaker. The wallmaker, 459. That reminded her of Mogget. Who knew what he had been? That strange combination of irascible companion to the Abhorson's blazing free magic construct sworn to kill them. Gone now, swept away by the mournful call of Astrael. I left this place knowing almost nothing about the old kingdom. I've come back with not much more, she thinks. I'm the most ignorant Abhorson in centuries. But she forces herself to focus. Okay? And the place gets attacked. Soldiers are trying to use guns. Don't do a whole lot of good against the dead. Unless you can riddle them into such little pieces that they can't move. Yeah, cheese grating, 467, the battle goes on. Sarcophagus is ringed by charter mages. Now they're all touching each other. Sabriel doesn't need to speak. They start to do the charter magic. Okay. Karagor comes in. That is the Karagor spirit, because his body's still down here. And we're told, 470. She was tired, and there were still free magic protections around the body, but the first mark soon lingered in the air. Others of the circle had crept up, linked hands again. Suddenly, Sabriel felt a stirring of relief. They were going to make it. His body would be destroyed, and the bearer of his power with it. And then, half the building blown apart. She lies on the floor, and a voice, blood price must be. There's Karagor. Okay? And we're told, not Karagor, a familiar voice, though not the liquid ruined tones of Karagor. Terrible speech of the night in Hollow. She looks, doesn't speak again. I must deliver my last burden, the creature said. Then the bargain is done, and I may turn to retribution. Sounds like that whatever Mogget was, the creature, has made a deal with the devil. so to speak. She blinks. Her senses are all screaming inside her, 472. Free magic, the dead, danger. The creature that had once been Margaret blazed a little more than 5 yards away. It was squatter than it had appeared previously, but equally misshapen, lumpy body slowly drifting. And the creature says, I bring you Abhorsen's sword. And the bell called Esterael. It lays them down. Okay. Who's bringing those two? Is it Abhorsen? Caragor. Come forward, Abhorsen. It is long since time that we met. That is, Caragor then says, come on, you and me. And then the thing laughed again. A sound like a magic knighting, and it started to move around the sarcophagus. Sabriel loosened. Okay. Caragor is very near, but there still might be time to turn this thing back into Margaret because she's thinking, I've got the little ring. Okay. And there's Caragor. Soldiers who barred the door lay dead. Caragor comes in. Okay. When it says, come forward, Abhorsen, that's the Margaret thing. Okay. He's saying, I've got millennia of payback. But Caragor comes in, 474. Abhorsen's mine. I've got an awful lot of Abhorsens to pay back too. Of course, you'd have to say, Margaret's got more. Caragor only lasts 200 plus years. Margaret, a couple thousand. You will leave her to me. I've waited too long to allow my revenge to be taken by another. Then it flew at Caragor, a shining electric comet hurtling into the darkness of his body, smashing into its shadowy substance. For a moment, no one moved, shocked by the suddenness, then Caragor's dark shape slowly recongealed, long tendrils. So Caragor's got to be pretty powerful if he can take this unbound, free magic, great charter construct thing. Sabriel looks around. She sees the Magistrix lying on her side, curled up. Other people might think she is unconscious. Sabriel knows, dead. She sees Touchstone, propped up against a pile of masonry. He's probably not moving much. He says, my leg's broken. Run, Sabriel, while he's busy. Run. Live a normal life. I can't. I'm Abhorsen. And Sabriel had already turned away. She picked up Esterael, practiced hands keeping it still, but there was no need, for the bell was choked with brick dust. Like she was going to ring it and send everybody. But it had too much dust in it. It wouldn't ring. It would not ring true until clean. She picks up the sword, watches the charter marks. She reads the inscription. The Clare saw me, the Wallmaker made me, the King quenched me, the Abhorsen wills me, so that no dead shall walk in life, for this is not the path. And she walks over towards Caragor. He was digesting something. We're not told what. There had to be something. Caragor had to be weaker, so far from the old kingdom. Page 478. Form of Caragor was darker still, even in the darkness. She sheathed her sword and drew the bells. Caragor doesn't move. She rings the bells. They don't do anything. Toys, Abhorsen. Too late. Someone, a girl quietly coughing out her last breath, lying on the floor, reaches up and touches Sabriel's leg. A small spark of golden charter magic came from that dying touch. It reaches Sabriel's wrist and her bells ring out. Okay? She rings them again. Again, Caragor doesn't fall under her power. She rings them again. This time Caragor changes. 480. Fiery eyes and mouth ran into each other like molten wax. His shadow stuff folded into a narrow column of smoke, roaring up into the ceiling. She stares at her empty hands for a second, still feeling the harsh imprint of bell handles. They're not in her hands anymore. And she looks at Caragor. An inconvenience. I should have remembered you were a troublesome brat. Well, how did Caragor know that?
Oh, because in the prologue, she grabbed him and hurt him.
Okay. Good. Hadn't thought of that.
Who her father is.
Yeah, well, I think there's something else there. Where's Mogget?
Oh, it's
Karagor ate him. It's a problem with Mogget. You can't eat Mogget. No sword can harm me, not even one made by the wall makers, especially not now. Power that ruled before the charter, power that made the wall. I have it now. I have that broken puppet, my half-brother, and I have you, I have that broken puppet. What's that? The power that made the wall. Mogget. Boom. I have my half-brother, and I have you. So, I'm going to take care of you. I've got part of this. That's going to be gone. So, all I got to do now is destroy the wall, because the charter stones won't be a problem, and take care of the cleric. Get all their power by killing them.
Wouldn't Mogget be technically the wall?
He's what's left over from the creation of the wall and charter stones. Okay? So it's
he's like the sixth.
related to it. Well, we'll see. So, they keep talking, and he goes, "What do you want, Abhorsen?" Your lover crawls towards us, a pathetic sight. And there's Touchstone crawling, broken leg on the ground to come closer. The ring is in Sabriel's hand, hidden behind her back. It had grown larger. It's no longer a ring, it's now a hoop. She can still feel it. Karagor brings her to him. A sisterly kiss, a kiss for an uncle who has known you since birth or slightly before. His words were not just words. Her left arm's free. Karagor's head bends forward, his face looming larger and larger. And then she drops the ring. She feels the compulsion snap off. She leans back. What is this? Some relic of, there's that word, impossible. And what does he do? He pushes her away, throws her to the floor, and at the same moment, okay, because he's got the sword in him that she thrust in him, he pulls it out, because swords can't hurt him, and does what? Pierces her with the sword sticking in the floor. Okay? Striking through Sabriel, through armor and flesh, and deep into the wooden floor beyond. So she's pinned. Pain explodes, obviously. Sabriel screams, body convulses. Karagor leaves her there. Touchstone says, "Roger, Roger." Splinter comes down with a strangled shriek of rage. Sabriel closes her eyes. She knows she could do nothing. She hadn't felt Touchstone die. Karagor struggles. The ring keeps collapsing. The ring gets smaller. That is, the ring of light keeps getting collapsing. Okay. Skip a bit. They hear the sound of Rana, because she rings it, in page 487. The ring keeps shrinking gradually. One hemisphere was as black as coal, the other gleaming white. Gradually, they melt into two distinct forms, two cats, joined at the throat like Siamese twins. The silver ring splits in two, a ring around each neck. The cats separate. The rings lost their brilliance, and there's two small cats side by side, one black, one white. Each one of them a ring, and they each have a collar, and the rings roll towards Sabriel, and then they lay down and go to sleep. So now Karagor is what?
Two cats. Well, no, one's...
He's bound. As long as nobody takes the collar off. If anybody does, they get what they have coming to them. Both her hands still clutched Rana, but it was silent, resting below her breasts. Her sword loomed above her, blade and hilt, casting the moon shadow of a cross on her face. And we hear, Highness, the Abhorsen is dead. But then we get the epilogue. Everyone and everything has a time to die. Well, who said that? Her father did. Something grabs her arms and legs, picks her up, pulls her out of the water, and a voice says, not your time. You think it? Not your time. Sabriel blinks, and there's a whole bunch of human shapes. Who are they?
Past that horse.
Yeah, 52 abortions. Go back. You're not dead yet. You're only mostly dead. Miracle Max wants you back. Go back. I can't. I'm dead. I don't have the strength. You're the last abortion. In other words, you can't go back, or you can't die until the next abortion's
Until you have a kid.
ready. Well, that's not how it works. Her father's,
Was the aunt.
it was his aunt who was the abortion. Okay?
Does she have any relatives?
Yeah, I can answer that. Wait till you read the next two books. Okay? So, one of them, perhaps her father, touches her head in the distant instant before she left the realm of death, and she wakes up and there's Touchstone. And suddenly she hears all kinds of sounds. She hears ambulances, etc. Live, Sabriel. Live, he says. Okay? Lights come back on. Okay? And we're told. Very last page, and then we'll go. Her eyes wandered to closer regions, to the two sleeping cats. Sabriel, Touchstone, had finally noticed. Okay, when he says, live, Sabriel, live, he's holding her hands. He's not looking at her face. He doesn't see her eyes open. Now he does. Lifted her head cautiously. He'd removed her sword. She saw several of her school friends had cast a hit. Well, that's pretty good. Because if you ever get impaled with something, don't pull it out. That's what causes you to die really, really fast. Because all the blood just... He'd removed her sword. They cast healing spells. Typically, Touchstone had done nothing for his own leg. You're alive. Yes, she said, I am. Big surprise. Okay? We don't see... Well, take that back. We will see Touchstone Touchstone and Sabriel in the next book. When we see them, when we meet them again, they are Queen Sabriel and King Touchstone.
Yes.
But the next book doesn't center on them at all.
Wait, what?
Wait, how? Why?
Well, what's the title? What's it called? Lyria.
You're the child.
Yeah, we'll see.